bear with me for a minute while I do a kind of Rachel Maddow style opening. So conservatives just fuck off. You don't want to hear this anyway. Back in the aughts, the 2000 aughts, the aughts, 2000, 4, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anyway, everybody in the country was playing poker. Like we were obsessed with Texas Hold'em. There were like TV shows like the World Poker Tour. Everybody was watching this stuff. Everybody was playing poker. There were tons of home games that popped up. We were making custom poker tables for our home games with rope lights, and maybe that was just me. Anyway, yeah, everybody was learning about poker. Everybody was like buying the books so you could read about it and get better at it. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people were. Like I had a copy of Doyle Brunson's Super System. I learned a lot of stuff I didn't know about poker, and I was a pretty decent poker player before the craze started. And so there was this poker rage. Everybody's like playing poker. It was crazy. And during that time, we all learned how to speak the language. We all learned poker lingo. Everything about, not just the easy stuff like raise and call and bluffs and things like that. But no, we got familiar with like the weird, eccentric little terms like pot odds. And my favorite phrase, pot committed. And what did pot committed mean? Pot committed meant that you had already put so much into the pot, this particular hand you're playing, that to give up the hand was foolish. It was foolish. So you had to keep playing it even though your odds weren't great. But you had to keep playing it. You had to keep playing it as hard as you could because that's all you had. You were pot committed. You were committed to that pot. And to walk away would be foolish. You would fail. So what the hell does that have to do with anything? I think it makes perfect sense. Let's talk. Welcome back to Trent Takes On 2.0. I'm Trent from the title of the show. And I was talking about being pot committed. I was talking about poker. I was talking about being stuck in a pot that you can't get out of, a pot of like a pile of money. Anyway, a situation. It's about being in a situation you can't. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. It doesn't mean somebody's just really into cannabis. Although that's a different definition of pot committed. So you could be that kind of pot committed and it has nothing to do with this. But this kind of pot committed is when you've made a mistake. Maybe you've overextended yourself a little bit and now you're stuck playing a bad hand to the best of your abilities, which may or may not be good. And it may not matter. And that's what pot committed means. That's the metaphor, baby. What has happened in this country? What is happening around us? This regime, this regime is pot committed. They're pot committed. They're pot committed. The abuse, the corruption, it's rampant. It's madness. And the new resolution of 2026 is apparently, holy shit, we're pot committed. We better just go for it. Go, go, go. The thing about being pot committed here is if they lose, and they're going to lose, they'll be held accountable for all the abuses. They'll be held accountable for all the corruption. The American people won't just put up with this forever. And when I say abuse and corruption, I'm talking about all of it. All of it. Everything from the crypto dealing to the blatant, like selling pardons, to knowingly, basically ignoring court orders not basically ignoring court orders. They've ignored court orders. They've said it doesn't matter. None of it matters. We're in charge. We're in power. We're going to be in power forever. That's the play. That's the play. In the last 10 days, 10 days, they have kidnapped the president of Venezuela. Not a good guy, but he's not the only one. It's not like when you remove him, everything gets fixed, because he's surrounded by all these people who are making his crazy ass vision a reality. Does that sound familiar to anyone else? Because that's what's happening here too. We have a mad king who has a worm tongue. For you Lord of the Rings fans out there, Stephen Miller is worm tongue. The only difference is Trump's not a good guy like Theoden. That's a fun literary reference, which is also a cinematic reference if you're familiar with the films, which most people are because they were huge. Sorry, I had to get a drink of coffee there. I had a little irritation in my throat. I think I came in too hot here. What we have... Okay, go back to Venezuela. They kidnap Maduro and bring him to the United States to face charges which are flimsy at best. They're already having problems with that indictment. Shocking. This is the team that can't shoot straight. Now they claim that they removed Maduro because it was a national security problem. They blame him for narco-terrorism. With him out of the way, the narcotics don't stop flowing. The same drug problem's still there. But it wasn't about drugs, was it? No, all that we've heard about since the kidnapping is oil. Oil. Seriously, oil? What is this, 1980? The value of the thick, viscous, extremely crude oil that is found underneath Venezuela, and here's the fun part, we don't actually know how much is there. The estimates that it's the largest oil reserve in the world was just made up out of whole cloth by Hugo Chavez back in the 80s. 90s. It just made, we're going off the word of this dude who is a total crazy person. Oil. The thing about oil is you have to pump it out of the ground, and in order to do that, you have to have a whole bunch of systems in place to make that happen. They're very expensive, especially with really heavy crude oil, which requires pumping steam into the oil deposits to force the oil deposits up. So you have to have all this stuff in place. The Venezuelan infrastructure is shot to hell. None of these techniques are producing enough oil to make it worth it at the ridiculous price of oil today, which is under $60 a barrel. It's like $58 a barrel. If it were $100 a barrel, okay, well, yeah, now we're talking. Now you got some money going. But it's kind of not worth it. Plus, you have to make sure that all of these systems in place are solid, that they're not going to fail, and that they won't be, eradicated by guerrillas. And by that, I don't mean the animal. I mean the freedom fighters in the jungle in Venezuela, of which there are many, or maybe the drug cartels in Venezuela, which are still there, which probably aren't happy with the way Americans have been behaving. I'm sorry, Americans. The American government / military has been behaving. So all these Trump pulled all these oil companies in and said, hey, which one of you guys are going to go to Venezuela? And they all looked at him and they're like, pass. We would rather not, if that's okay. So we invaded Venezuela. Well, we didn't. We did temporarily invade Venezuela for the evening, stole their president and the first lady, left the rest of the regime in charge. And now what? I don't know. Trump made himself temporary acting president of Venezuela on Wikipedia. Congratulations. I guess that's exciting for your resume. And then just to prove that, well, I don't know, just to prove that they're not done being morons, they threatened Colombia. They're threatening Cuba constantly. Now we're just going to go ahead and do the same thing in Cuba. Okay. They threatened Cuba and Venezuela. Oh, and Greenland. They're going to just take Greenland. He keeps coming back to, we're just going to take Greenland. Greenland belongs to Denmark. It's a territory of Denmark that's autonomously controlled, actually. The people of Greenland are in charge of Greenland. I mean, their day-to-day operations and stuff. And they're members of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is, the greatest alliance in the history of humanity. And Donald Trump, they have a treaty with us where we actually have military bases there, and we have since the 40s. And you can bring in as many troops as you want to keep the peace. They're fine with that. So the military angle that Trump talks about, that's hokum. And then as far as the rare earth minerals that are there, if you want to mine that stuff, they'll absolutely sell you the rights to just do it. You don't have to go for a costly military operation. You don't have to attempt to buy Greenland. I don't know where he's getting all this money either. Yeah, weird. So we're going to threaten to do that. And this regime is just out over its skis in foreign policy, basically everywhere. We'll talk about Iran in just a second. So put a pin in Iran. Boop. Because the real problem that we've got going on is with the immigrations and customs enforcement and the mass deportation policy of this administration. That's not really a mass deportation policy. It's more like a mass incarceration policy. Okay? I don't believe they're deporting anywhere near as many people as they claim they are, and they claim they deported 622,000 undocumented persons last year. 622,000. For perspective, the Obama administration averaged 425,000 deportations every year for 8 years. And they did it all without threatening a civil war in our country and destroying the economy and the peace of neighborhoods and cities across the United States. Just saying, there's a way to accomplish this stuff, like the deportation of undocumented peoples, that isn't wildly illegal and inflammatory. But they've chosen they don't want to do that. So they're going with this. It's very, it's become the talking point in the United States. We don't talk about the Epstein files anymore. Like my wife said, look, nobody's talking about that anymore. And I was like, yeah. And I understand why, because this feels like it's more pressing. The United States government has a rogue law enforcement arm, a Gestapo, if you will, that follows the orders of Wormtongue, Stephen Miller, and have been unleashed on an American city, Minneapolis, to the point where there are currently more than 1,000 agents. You heard that right. 1,000 agents, not just Immigration and Customs Enforcement, but CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, who have no jurisdiction more than 100 miles from the border. Think about that. Why do we need Customs Border Patrol in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is quite a ways from the Canadian border? More than 100 miles. Yep. I've been there. Nice city. Real nice city. St. Paul, very nice. Been to both. They're terrorizing these neighborhoods. They're terrorizing the city. They killed a woman last week named Renee Good. Shot her 3 times. I did a podcast about it. It's my last show. Last week I did that show. Since then it's come out. All the different videos have come out. They released a video that the shooter himself was taking with his phone that was in his hand. He was so worried that he was about to get killed that he was filming the altercation on his camera, on his phone, a camera phone. And now I'm Captain Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Since the killing, the Department of Justice took over the investigation, refused to let the Minnesota State Police has a special task force to deal with these use of force incidents. We'll call it an incident, even though it's way worse than that. It was formed after the George Floyd killing in 2020. And the whole reason was we have to install faith in the people of the state. And this should go anywhere. That when an officer exercises the use of force and something goes horribly wrong like it did in this situation, that situation is investigated properly and transparently, and that we get to the bottom of it. And if the officer was in the wrong, then he is held accountable. Well, the Department of Justice has stepped in, taken all the evidence, and refused to allow the state police to do their job. State and local police don't have any say in this. Now, this is from the Republican Party, the same Republican Party that screams at the top of their lungs about the 10th Amendment, about states' rights. In this case, they're kind of quiet. Also, the word came out yesterday that at least 4 top attorneys from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, which would be the ones that would prosecute in this situation where a federal agent has violated the civil rights and then killed. Yeah, that counts. Of an American citizen. That's what happened here. The Civil Rights Division, 4 high-end lawyers have resigned because the head of the Civil Rights Division has announced internally that they will not be pursuing an investigation or prosecution in the Renee Good killing. There are currently more ICE agents in Minneapolis than there are regular police, local police. And they're sending 1,000 more ICE agents, not regular police. There are no more regular police. That's it. There are 400,000 people, give or take, in Minneapolis. It's not that big a city. According to Keith Ellison, the immigrant population of Minnesota is about 1.8% of the state's population. He pointed out that there were higher concentrations of immigrants in, of course, states like Florida and Texas, huge immigrant populations in both places, but they don't have the same enforcement going on there. Hell's bells, there's a higher immigrant population by significant margin in the state of Utah. But there's no immigration enforcement there. So he's pointing out that what's being done is being done maliciously, targetedly, and with targetedly is not a word, targeted, and it's targeted. There you go. It's targeted harassment. He's right. He's absolutely right. So let's take it to its pot committed end. If you're scared that you're going to be held accountable if new representatives are elected, what do you have to do? Stop the election. That's what you have to do. A war in a foreign land, that doesn't work. Doesn't happen. We still have elections. We've fought in many foreign wars and always had elections. We've never canceled elections in the United States. Never. Including between 1861 and 1865, when we had a war going on our own soil. Now referred to as a civil war, which is insane because civil and war don't go together. It's a very nice war, but it wasn't a nice war. It was the most horrifying war that we've ever fought in. It really looks like the plan is to send enough ICE agents in, to cause enough havoc, to harass enough people, to terrorize this community to the point where someone snaps. Where someone snaps and attacks the ICE officers, attacks the Border Patrol, they've got FBI there, they've got Drug Enforcement Agency there, the DEA. Yeah, we've got a real drug problem in this country. Meanwhile, we're going to tie up all of our DEA agents doing immigration enforcement, which is what they've done. They're desperately trying to hire 10,000 more agents. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel. They've lowered the age to sign up for ICE to 18. Are you fucking kidding me? They're giving a bunch of pissed off, meat-obsessed, MAGA patriots guns and badges, which they don't have to display, and masks so they can hide, and sending them out into communities filled with people that they've already expressed that they hate. Holy shit. What could go wrong? The plan sure seems to be instigate, escalate, so that they can enact martial law and use the military to take over our cities. And maybe they don't cancel the entire 2026 midterms. Maybe they only cancel the election in cities. Blue cities. Minneapolis, LA, Chicago, Portland, Washington, D.C., you name it. Maybe they just tell us we can't have elections. And that's how they stay in power. Maybe the elections happen, but they use these tens of thousands of ICE agents with their masks and their guns and their bad attitudes to police polling places where they keep people from casting ballots. They're pot committed. Any kind of accountability could ruin them. At any time, even with the mass media, the mainstream media, if at any time the mainstream media turned around and said it's time to report the real story, and that is that Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, Border Patrol, DEA, they don't have any jurisdiction to do most of what they're doing. Most of these things that they're doing, most of these arrests they're not legal. They have no jurisdiction to do it, especially of protesters. The arresting and harassment, the assault on protesters, they don't have the authority to do that. They do not have the authority to do those things. And that's why, when they arrest somebody and they find out that they are an American citizen, they threaten them with all kinds of charges. We can charge you with obstruction. But then they let them go. We could charge you with assaulting an officer, but then they let them go. One of the reasons that they have to do that is because everything's being videoed now. Everybody's got a camera in their pocket, a full-blown TV station in their pocket, where they can record, where they can transmit it into the universe. So everything these idiots are doing, we're going to have records of it. These people are criminals. Not the ones getting arrested. The ones doing the arresting. The ones claiming to be law enforcement. And the idea here is to cause an incident where they can bring in the military to keep the peace. And it sure looks like they've picked Minneapolis as the place where it's most likely to happen. They tried it in Portland. They tried it first. They tried it in LA. Total fail. Then they tried in Portland. Total fail. They tried in Chicago. Total fail. And now Minneapolis. And they might have decided that this is it. I left out Washington, D.C. They absolutely tried D.C. So, they're arresting protesters. They're assaulting protesters. They're shooting protesters with pepper balls and tear gas if you're lucky. Rubber bullets, less lethal options like rubber bullets. Bean bags are on the table. And sometimes, if you're Renee Good, it's a bullet. They're trying to push us into violently reacting, and they will succeed at some point. Because you can't take it forever. And right now, it sure feels like there's nobody on our side that should be on our side. Local law enforcement is supposed to uphold their oath to serve and protect the people, even from rogue federal agents. We'll see what happens. I will say this, that the regime is cheering on their agents, cheering on their federal Gestapo police force, saying these protesters are domestic terrorists and that they must be stopped at any cost. So earlier I did mention Iran. There have been crazy, huge protests, especially in Tehran, but I believe all over the country, of people trying to basically dislodge the regime there and take power back to the people. And Donald Trump is threatening military action in Iran if the Iranian government kills protesters. Well, they've already killed over 500. Here's a Donald Trump truth, worst name ever, from January 13th at 8:43 a.m. That's this morning, about 4 hours ago, as I stand here and record Eastern time. The tweet, or the truth, fucking ludicrous. Iranian patriots keep protesting Take over your institutions. Save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price. I have canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. MAGA, which I guess is Make Iran Great Again. President Donald J. Trump. So the Iranian government killing protesters calls for military intervention from the United States, but our own federal government killing protesters who are American citizens, assaulting people at every turn. American citizens or not, doesn't matter. Still not legal to assault people. That is permissible. Unless it was the January 6th protesters who did things 100,000 times worse than any of the protesters we've seen since. And every single one of them was pardoned by this regime on day one. The real terrorists are running the country. The point of terror is not to kill everyone. It's not. It's to make you change the way you live. It's to make you scared to live the life that you're supposed to live. It's to take away your freedoms by forcing you to think that they're already gone. I don't advocate for violence. I am not a fan of violence. I just see which way the wind is blowing. The incident in question will probably come because it's provoked and because someone fears for their life. And they will lash out. And bad things will happen. I don't have words of comfort for this moment. Hold your loved ones close. Let the people in your life know that you are an ally on the side of good. That you will not stand by and watch them taken from you if you happen to be a white person, which I am. And what happens when they start coming for the dissidents like me? Well, I guess I'll see it coming because I'm going to be really low on the list. This nation has never been as imperiled as it is right now. Because there is a madman in charge of a regime that is hell-bent for leather on taking away the rights, the freedoms of Americans by destroying our way of life. Fascism. Installing their own fascist regime who tells us what to do. Your freedoms are being stolen from you. We want to restore our nation to sanity. And the best way to do that is peacefully through the ballot box. With any luck, we'll still have that option in November. Until then, be mindful. Do not hide from the news because we have to witness it. Support independent journalism if you can. They need our help. The protesters on the ground need to know that they're not alone. And if the protests come to your town, I hope you're a part of them. Arm in arm, taking strength from those around you, giving strength to those around you, because that's how it works. I'm going to take off for the day, but I'll be back later this week. Thank you for being with me today and every day. Thank you for doing your best to be good humans. It's the least we can do. Until next time, thank you. I love you.